please tell me in plain English 2 or 3 reforms, regulations, if any, that you would implement if you were queen or king for a day. Mr. Altman, here's your shot.
Here's your shot. I think this one verbal slip tells a lot about what the future of AI regulation is all about. Here's your shot is a curious choice of words when it comes to government regulation. Usually when you have been given a shot, it's to score. Regulation isn't meant to score, it's meant to defend.
I think what's happening today in this hearing room is historic. I can't recall when we've had people representing large corporations or private sector entities come before us and plead with us to regulate them.
So why is Sam Altman, CEO and founder of OpenAI, somehow getting a shot to score? It's because he's getting a shot to score a big defensive win, which is to restrict a powerful offensive AI player. Open source.
AI is infrastructure for the next generation of human thought. And what should that mean? It should mean that it should be a commons that is accessible to everyone. And leapfrog.
And you made a very definitive decision to make this an open source movement here.
Yeah.
Your community is how large now?
I think we've got about 120,000.
That was Emad Mustak, founder and CEO of Stability AI, which, as you just heard, has a team of over 100,000 contributors to their open source models such as Stable Diffusion. If you dive into text-to-image generation, you'll find that Stable Diffusion is up there with the best. Given its open source nature, you can download it and run it on your personal PC or Mac.
Why would you want to actually have Stable Diffusion installed on your own computer? Well, the answer to that is there's zero limits with it. You could literally create anything you want with Stable Diffusion when it's installed locally. When you're using Midjourney, they have some restrictions, some words you can't use. If you also use it with your own trained images, if you've watched my previous tutorial where I showed you how to actually train your face into the AI, the CKPT file that it generated when you followed through on that process, you can actually use that model inside of Stable Diffusion and generate as many images as you want with your own face.
Ironically, I asked ChatGPT to describe how I could leverage an open-source large language model for a specific business need, and it responded with these 5 steps. The point is, an open-source large language model could act as a base model that can be customized and tweaked with business-specific acronyms, product lines, and other esoteric concepts. That's amazing! If only they existed. Oh, but they do exist. Just a few weeks ago, Stability AI announced Stable Vicuna, the AI world's first open-source RLHF LLM chatbot. There have been other open-source chatbots, but this is the first that's utilized the same training techniques as the big closed-source models like GPT-4 and Bard. You can read the specifics of the model's methodology on Stability AI's website, and you can even test out the model in its temporary environment. But instead of me droning on about how open-source AI is here, check out this leaked document written by someone inside Google, explaining how open source models are an existential threat to closed source. That means you, Sam. And look, I don't mean to pick on Mr. Altman, I'm sure some of his fears are genuine. But we need to consider that this is a shrewd businessman, and regulation is a shrewd business decision. To point out some of the main points in the leaked article titled, "We Have No Moat," they say Google is not positioned to win this arms race, and neither is OpenAI. People are running open-source models on smartphones, customizing them on their laptops in an evening. Restriction-free chat models are coming.
Where is the open-source world sort of more broadly?
So we have our place in the open-source world, and we'll be building benchmark models of every modality. So we have language models, chat models, other things coming out.
They're doing things with $100 and 13 billion parameters that we struggle with at $10 million and 540 billion parameters. And they are doing so in weeks, not months. There was low-key anti-open source sentiment riddled throughout the hearing.
Hyper-targeting of advertising is definitely going to come. I agree that that's not been OpenAI's business model. Of course, now they're working for Microsoft, and I don't know what's in Microsoft's thoughts, but we will definitely see it. Maybe it will be with open source language models. I don't know.
The government wants control above all else. Open source models that can proliferate throughout society do not equal control.
I'm concerned about proliferation.
Even in Sam's answer to his shot, he subtly outlines ways in which regulation can favor his large corporation, while open source is crippled.
Here's your shot.
Thank you, Senator. Number one, I would form a new agency that licenses any effort above a certain scale of capabilities and can take that license away and ensure compliance with safety standards. Number two, I would create a set of safety standards focused on what you said in your third hypothesis as the dangerous capability evaluations. One example that we've used in the past is looking to see if a model can self-replicate and self-exfiltrate into the wild. We can give your office a long other list of the things that we think are important there, but specific tests that a model has to pass before it can be deployed into the world. And then third, I would require independent audits. So not just from the company or the agency, but experts who can say the model is or isn't in compliance with these stated safety thresholds and these percentages of performance on question X or Y.
1. An agency would have a much easier time tightly policing a few large closed-source models. They cannot hope to be effective police of open-source models that can be endlessly customized. 2. Although he mentioned self-replication, this pretty much means replication, which is a feature of open-source technology, that it can be endlessly replicated and tweaked. 3. If everyone has their own customized open-source model, there is essentially zero chance of effective auditing. In short, what he proposed can only be administered in a closed-source environment. This wouldn't be the first time large corporations got in bed with the US government. In fact, ever since the success of Roosevelt's New Deal, the most effective way for government to administer regulation is to embrace large corporations as essentially another branch of government.
With the onset of the New Deal, which Burley and Means strongly supported, Burley was a leading member of Franklin Roosevelt's Brains Trust. What was most interesting to them about the new separation of ownership and control in business was that it created opportunities for government.
Even in the hearing, Senator Josh Hawley brought up the mutually beneficial relationship between corporations and the agencies meant to regulate them.
I'm interested in this talk about an agency, and maybe that would work. Although, having seen how agencies work in this government, they usually get captured by the interests that they're supposed to regulate. They usually get controlled by the people who they're supposed to be watching. I mean, that's just been our history for 100 years. Maybe this agency would be different.
Considering the verbal slip of Sam Getting, his shot, the historic call from corporations to get regulated, the existential risk to OpenAI's dominant position from open-source competitors, and America's history of regulation helping the corporations it's supposed to regulate, it doesn't take a stretch of the imagination to consider Altman as an ulterior motive. Maybe he wants the best for humanity, but don't forget he's the one who led the company from a research-based non-profit to a multi-billion-dollar merger with Microsoft. Comment below, and don't hesitate to hit like and subscribe for more. Peace